Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen, and as you can see, it's a very wet qualifying session here for the PRL Season 10 Spanish Grand Prix. And it's full wet and I'm completely out of control across the chicane. This and next lap invalidated. What's more, didn't get into the pits, it happened so late in the lap. I continued for obviously another 2 laps to get to this point where I put a lap in.
Really coming down, soft braking into the first corner.
It was good enough for third, and I was lucky not to get blocked by any of these cars streaming out of the pit lane to start the next lap, which would actually be my best of the session. You can see the Delta well green here, coming across the line to go P1.
Nice job, we're sat in pole position.
However, I'd made the mistake of not allowing myself enough time to go out again, and the Inters were now the better tyre. Thankfully for me, no one noticed this, and despite Maz being out there at the drier part of the session and going ahead of me for another pole position for that man, 4 now out of a possible 5, and I was very, very lucky to be on the front row. I really screwed up. What could have been for Mercedes? We were looking very good in the dry. In the wet though, didn't quite have it. Off the start, bit of wheel spin for Maz, but it seems like it was a good start. We've got OP behind on mediums. Obviously everyone with a free choice of which dry compound tyre to start on. You can see the lag. Maz is the usual host, but tonight he requested not to be host in case he had to leave. So I'm hosting, and unfortunately that's creating a bit of carnage, certainly behind, as you'll see later in the footage. But Maz maintains the lead like he did in Australia. However, I have a statistic to keep up where I pass someone on the opening lap of every race, unless I start on pole like in Bahrain, and there was my opportunity. Down the inside at the left-hander, Maz left me a bit too much space, and despite a little bit of contact, we are through relatively cleanly. Now on board with the Red Bull here of Craig, you can see a lot of lag from OP in front. Complete failure to make turn 1. I think OP went with him. Certainly a Force India could have been Bozza. Now look at the mini-map. In the bottom left you can see a car peeling into the pits. It's actually Maznat, as I set the fastest opening lap. So he has come in to retire, as you can see in the bottom of the screen. My teammate, unfortunately Danny, having a horrible start with some damage. I tried to get away, but someone tacked onto the back of me, and that was Harry Ryan in his second PRL race. Notably catching up a lot with the DRS there, so he must have some low wings. Bit of a gamble though towards the end of the stints though. As you can see, he drops back and makes an earlier pit stop than the rest of the front runners. He must be going for a 2-stop at this point, you would imagine.
DRS will be offline. There's a fault with the rear wing system. Stay out, we can work on a fix remotely.
Well, we had a fault with the rear wing, but Nemo had a fault with not being in the race anymore, strewn across the track at the last corner. Very unfortunate for the Ferrari driver. We end up pitting with Stewart in hot pursuit at the end of lap 11, about 3 laps later than Harry Ryan elected to make his pit stop.
Go, go, go.
We're onto the hards. Harry turned out was on the medium, so he would be definitely going for a 2-stop. Stewart making the exact same strategy call as I did, and he was following us as other cars pitted, having started on the mediums as well. You can see a car coming out of the pits here. It's a Toro Rosso of Crook, a lap down, and he lets us through. Does get a little bit in the way of Stewart, but not too much, and Stewart would stay with us. In fact, Stewart had a lot of pace. The rookie was looking good, potentially for his first win. He's already picked up a podium, remember, in round 2 at China with that 3rd position. But I really have to put my defensive hat on at this point. Despite OP being in the lead, we are the actual net leader. And looking back, we can see the McLaren of Harry losing it in the background and retiring mere seconds later. So that very unfortunate way to end the race for Harry, who was looking very strong and in a net P3 at the time. This back straight was actually more of a challenge defensively than the front straight. It seemed certainly that Stewart had more downforce than me, which made sense as he couldn't get past towards turn 1. It was set up really nicely from 9 to 10. So I had to defend the inside pretty much every lap into the hairpin, and also here, very strong in the first sector, was the Williams driver. As you can see here, he's almost pushing me through the fast sweepers. Once again, I take the defensive line, and that should be enough. He's tried the over and under, cut the corner actually, screws his own exit. But this happened lap after lap. I had to always stay to the left, make sure he didn't have an opportunity. He actually gets his nose in front on this occasion, but doesn't quite get the traction he requires. I have the ascendancy on the left.
Just managed the gap to the car behind.
Interestingly, he had a penalty, which I duly noted at that point and knew that I could just follow him to the end if he did manage to get by. But I continued defending for the moment because I thought there was a potential that he could get through and extend the gap, given the pace advantage he seemed to have at this point in the race, although I was at the same time conserving my tyre because I knew there was rain coming right at the death and I wanted all the grip I could possibly have to not spin out. Lap 23, and he's still right with us. Again, the same scenario, down the outside towards the hairpin. Can he make it work this time? Not quite as far up as he was the previous time, tries the over and under, doesn't quite work. However, later in the lap, through the chicane he got a great run this time. Usually I pulled a bit of a gap, but on this occasion, he's right with us.
Your pit window is now open.
We won't be pitting again, Jeff. Unfortunately, we saw Danny pitting there with further damage. She really had a race to forget. But Stewart does come down the inside. A bit of contact forces us across the chicane to start the lap. I'll of course get an illegal overtake for that, so I'll let him through.
Okay, you need to give that position back. That was an illegal overtake.
Probably should have rolled out on the outside, now that I think about it. But at the time it seemed like he was going to go for an outside move. Sorry about that. He didn't get damaged though, so that was fine. However, what wasn't fine was Mozza staying in front of us the entire lap, giving 2 occasions for Stewart to get DRS to defend from me. As you can see, I didn't close up a single bit. He also had the slipstream from the offending Toro Rosso, who this would be an interesting smoking gun for what was about to happen in Monaco a week later with blue flags. Anyhow, he got out of the way eventually. I had one crack at him with the DRS. It wasn't quite as close as I was on the previous lap. Later in the lap, unfortunately for Stewart, it would all come undone, lose the rear. I don't think he got damage, but he certainly lost a lot of time. Now Danny, talking of time, sets a really cracking lap time. Unfortunately was a lap down by this stage after multiple incidents where she'd had to pit for new front wings. I set my personal best late in the race. As we know, the hard's very good late on in Spain. And as you can see, the rain is falling and Stewart is recatching me, but I had that margin pretty much calculated and I would go on to record another victory. That's now 3 on the season out of a possible 5. And the second race in succession after that Russian Grand Prix triumph. Bozza also on the podium, fantastic drive from him. I'll be looking forward to the Monaco Grand Prix in just 1 week's time. I've been Jacko, see you then.